Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez, and welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting for Wednesday, June 12th. I am joined by my colleagues, Councilmember David Ryu, and you can sit up here if you want, David, and Councilmember Greg Smith. And we do have a couple of, we have, I know, one general public comment card and a few cards on items on the agenda, but first I'd actually like colleagues if we could take items 3 through 5 on consent, if there are no objections. Nope. Seeing none, that'll be the order. Madam Clerk, would you like to read those into the record, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Item 3 will approve the recommendations of the CAO. For item 4, we will note and file the Board of Police Commissioners report. And for item 5, we will approve the Board of Fire Commissioners report to accept the donation.
Terrific. And I know on item 2, I believe we have an amendment, so if we can go ahead and call item 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 2 is a City Administrative Officer report relative to the execution of a professional services agreement between the Los Angeles Police Department and Aon Nexus Corporation for the configuration of a customer relationship management platform and online candidate portal services. This item has a time limit for action.
Oh, okay. Well, no. Do we have the technical amendment on that? Okay, so we have Brian O, I believe, in the CAO. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? My apologies. That was not my intention to call item 2. My bad. So, but we've already got you here, so my apologies. But very quickly, I know we just had a couple of very quick questions regarding this item. And thank you. We've been joined by Councilmember Mitchell Farrell. We are on item number 2. And if you want to go ahead and report on this, please.
Righto, Office of the CAO. The report before you is a request from the LAPD for authority to execute a professional service agreement with Aon Nexus Corporation for the configuration of a customer relationship management platform and online candidate portal services. The CRM platform and online candidate portal services will assist with the recruitment and management of the hiring process of police candidates. The term of the contract is 3 years upon contract execution with the option of 2 additional years in 1-year increments for a total of 5 years. The agreement includes compensation limit of $595,150 for option A and $630,130 for option B. Option B provides a complete replacement for the current comprehensive human resources information system database, as well as development of an Academy CRM platform, while option A only provides enhancements to the current CRIS database and does not include the Academy CRM platform. There is sufficient funding for this contract and no additional general fund appropriation is required.
I had a couple of quick questions, and I don't know if this would be more appropriate, Vartan, if you wanted to join as well. Is this going to be, the CRM, I know it's a very important process of us managing our hiring process when it comes to the new personnel that we're hoping to increase for LAPD. Is this going to live and be managed by LAPD or on the personnel department side?
Councilwoman, I think the second phase of this CRM program will be under Los Angeles Police Department's administration, while the first portion will be under Personnel Department. It is designed as such because most of the users of the system will be Personnel Department managing the hiring process, recruitment and hiring process. But once we land the personnel in Academy and thereafter the probationary period management, it's all going to be done by Los Angeles Police Department personnel. Therefore, the users will be from LAPD, thus the LAPD will manage and administer the second portion.
And as far as the platform that is currently being proposed, we're assured, given all the investments that we're making with some of our other personnel management, that this is able to integrate seamlessly with some of the other efforts that we're doing?
Absolutely. This is a Microsoft product. It's called Customer Relationship Program 360. It is a robust, one of the state-of-the-art programs, It is very integratable, and it can actually integrate with current legacy programs or any future program if it's necessary. The program itself will run by itself. It will not need additional applications to manage it, but if in case in the future the city decides to purchase other applications that could enhance or integrate with the system, it can.
Terrific. Colleagues, I don't know if you had any questions? Mr. Smith?
Just on that, on the Microsoft program, I've seen a lot when you do a search on Microsoft now, you start getting ads for everything that related to what you just searched. So will this be connected like this? For instance, if somebody looks up police jobs, is LAPD going to start flashing up on them to see that they're looking for personnel?
So good question. So the platform is designed to actually attract recruits or candidates, so to speak. So the platform does have capabilities to assist candidates who are trying to become police officers, and will load up all kind of information that they need to progress through the hiring process. As far as marketing itself, the program has capability to connect to the internet and other applications to do robust media marketing. That capability comes with the Microsoft CRM program, but we can also enhance it with programs such as the other applications that I can't remember the names right now. Sorry.
So we have the ability to do that, and that's what I'm asking is, recently I did a search for LAPD on something, and for the next week I got El Segundo is hiring.
Oh, no.
I would like to see that LAPD is hiring in there as well.
So this program cannot control the internet entirely, but what it does, it's designed to, once we capture people, this is a very competitive program. We want to keep the people in our program and hire them. So we're not going to send them to somewhere else.
Okay, so the connectivity with Microsoft is your internal, but I'm looking for the external connection that their data mining is what they're doing. So if anybody was to go to the LAPD site through Microsoft program, is there a way to connect them to get LAPD messages? And conversely, for recruiting purposes, can we connect through the Microsoft program anybody that may have searched El Segundo PD jobs or something like that as well?
So yes, the program is designed to be able to reach out all types of people. It can, and it has to do with the marketing module and advertisement.
And is that an option that we have or are going to use?
This program actually is not designed particularly to do the advertisement. It's designed to hire people once they land on our webpage and fill out the application. So the recruitment piece and marketing piece is completely different. Okay. But what I'm trying to say is the recruitment and marketing can link up with this program and create more opportunities for people who are interested in LAPD.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
Yes.
I don't know if that's collateral to this or if you can make it part of the suggestion from this, but
we can make it part of this program.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, did you complete? And just one final question. I know there was whether or not you were going to elect for option A or B. Has the department made a decision or a determination on which you would proceed with?
So we include the option A and B solely because of the funding. The option A was designed to provide services with limited funding, but we were granted $375,000 for the CRM enhancement for the next fiscal year, so we can achieve the option B starting July.
Okay, terrific. Colleagues, were there any other questions? Okay, thank you so much, Vartan. We did get a card on this item that just came in from Wayne Francino. If you'd like to come up on item number 2. You have 1 minute.
Yes, that's right. The LA Police Department and Aon Nexus for Customer Relationship Management Platform. Yes, I support it because what this will do is next time they illegally pull me over in Reseda, next time they illegally pull me over as I'm trying to work, a black man just trying to do his job, I will be able to input my data and get an immediate response of why my civil rights under Bain Act 52.1 and 42 U.S.C. 1983 were violated again. This is what Greg Smith has always wanted to do. That's why he returned back to this council. It's a cooperation between Mitchell Englander, the FBI, Greg Smith, and Dennis Zine. Thank you to the team. Let's keep up the good work.
Okay. So colleagues, with that, I'd like to recommend the approval of the CAO's recommendations and direct the department to proceed with option B. If there are no objections, that'll be the order. And that brings us to item number 1.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the reappointment of Ms. Delia Ibarra to the Board of Fire Commissioners for the term ending June 30, 2024. There's also a time limit for council to act on this item.
Thank you so much. Hi, Delia. Welcome. And we do have 2 public comment cards. Wayne, you're welcome to use this as your second item, and that'll conclude your multiple comment cards. And but first, I'd actually like to call up Mr. Freddie Escobar.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Rodriguez, honorable committee members. Freddie Escobar, and I proudly serve as president for United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, representing over 3,000 members. I'm here today to speak in strong support of the reappointment of Delia Ibarra on the Board of Fire Commissioners. For nearly 6 years now, since she was first appointed, Commissioner Ibarra has been a great asset to the Fire Commission, the Los Angeles Fire Department, and ultimately to the people of our city by giving thousands of her own time, hours of her own time to serve on this commission, providing proper guidance and direction to the LAFD. She has also worked hard to make sure that the Fire Commission serves the important role of providing proper oversight, checks and balances to the department, and at the same time, she has led the commission in producing innovative new ideas for how to improve the LAFD. I know I'm short on time. President Ibarra, thank you for the collaborative work we've done. Our members are behind you 110%.
Thank you, Captain Escobar.
Thank you, Freddie. And Wayne? So this is for the remaining items as well as item number 1.
General public comment, yes. So, yes, the Board of Fire Commissioners, where were you when Mr. Vudovic was telling you about the fire alarms? Where were you when you retaliated against him? Where were you when you retaliated against a valid whistleblower claim? You were nowhere because the head of the union played pool with Mr. Garcetti at the Garcetti-controlled mansion over there in that fucking Getty house, and they fired Mr. Vudovic and forced him to make a retirement. They sued you scumbags for $800,000 measly dollars. You ruined his career, you ruined his life because he told you that they were not doing proper inspections. So, Mr. Smith, deny this motion, deny this applicant. She is a conspirator under color of authority against Mr.
That
Vudo.
that concludes your multiple item comment cards. And Ms. Ibarra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here, and thank you for your service on one of the most important commissions that I think we have in our city family. And so with that, I want to open it up and allow you to discuss a little bit some of the policy areas that you've been most focused on and where you see in this extension of your tenure in this role, what some of your areas of priorities are as it relates to gender equity and some of the work that that the department is focused on.
Sure. Honestly, as I was reflecting on this, on what we would touch upon today, last night, and 6 years, and there's been just so much that has happened. I think that when we started, the city was under extreme, financial distress, and particularly our department had seen a lot of cutbacks. So I think the first couple of years were, for us, like understanding the operational complexity of the department and how it could continue to thrive and provide excellent service despite the budgetary issues. And out of that crisis, I think, a lot of good came. A lot of innovation happened. As a result of that, we have the FRV, which operates in your district, and also in downtown, and the APRU, which started off as the MPRU, the sobriety, just a number of things. Just 2 days ago, because we've become known as a department that embraces innovation, the state has offered that we also pilot a different program, and we are actually, there's a new program in Los Angeles that is also, it's called the, I'm sorry, I'm not the subject matter expert, Chief Everett is, but I think it's called the Alternative Destination Unit. So we have to try new things. Our call load is increasing. Even as fire decreases, we still have more people in the city of Los Angeles, especially in downtown, than we've ever had. We need to figure out new models for servicing that. That's going to be a big focus. It's been a big focus up until now. There's been a number of challenges throughout the tenure. One of them has been hiring. So we did once we started rehiring, we noticed that there was a number of issues. Diversity is a big concern for everybody in the city of Los Angeles, for the Board of Fire Commissioners as well. So we took strong steps against nepotism, because nepotism is historically the challenges that we've had in the department. The people who are most connected to the department are white males, as you know, because your father's a firefighter. So the people who are going to have the most connections were going to be white males. So if we really wanted to increase diversity, we needed to take strong steps. But that also meant like preventing discrimination against people like yourself, who, like, if you wanted to apply, you would have a connection to the department. And as you know, the department is complex in that way. So there's just been so many different things that have happened in 6 years. It's hard to sort of encapsulate it. But what I see moving forward is continuing a focus on diversity. We've actually increased the number of women in the fire service, especially in this department, continuously. We're about 3.5. We were about 2 when I joined the commission. We've maintained the numbers of African Americans in the department, despite the fact that the population of African Americans in the city is decreasing. And we did that by committing to excellence, by making sure that all the applicants that were coming were committing to excellence. And we have people who are absolutely qualified to be in the department. And I think it's been good. Some of the challenges going forward, I think we need to focus on mental health, the mental health of our members. As you know, one of the challenges that we've seen is that we've actually lost more members to suicide than we've lost to on-the-job deaths during the 6 years that I've been here. So we need to make that more of an emphasis. We have excellent firefighters throughout the department, but they're humans. And some of the things that they experience cause trauma. And since these are on-the-job incidents, we need to do more to make sure that we meet their mental health needs. That's going to be one of our primary priorities. It's already being reflected in the budget that was approved. And also mental health for the population that we serve, because we're seeing that as well. And continued prioritizing diversity and women in the fire service. There's a lot more, but that's just all that could come to mind just at the moment.
Okay. And in terms of youth programming as well, I know that's been, a number of your colleagues have also been focused on that area. In terms of the expansion of youth programs, I know that's an area of my great interest and a number of my colleagues in assuring that continued success and growth as part of the support system that helps us assure the diversity, the opportunities and expansion for women to identify themselves as potential candidates for this incredible department. Colleagues, did you have any? Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Commissioner Ibarra, for your years of service already.
Thank you.
Just focusing in on the whole trauma piece for a moment, we know that all the training in the world won't necessarily prepare anyone who knows full well that in their profession they will likely face traumatic or have traumatic experiences. But I'm still wondering if perhaps some component of the training to become a firefighter can innovate new ways of better preparing someone for facing the inevitable, so that once it does happen, and it likely happens multiple times through someone's long career of a firefighter, if something else innovative couldn't be done, perhaps the department's already looking at that, but certainly on the other side of that, just the consistent community of psychological care is essential regardless moving forward. So I'm a real big believer in that as well. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm supportive of anything that's going to help, and certainly, if it can start even in the academy, or even, already we do screen applicants for sort of mental toughness. So I think that they bring that, but there's no, they're human beings. So stuff happens every day that they experience that's going to cause them issues. What we are seeing is that there's new openness throughout the fire service to speak about these issues because it's costing them their lives. So I just think that we're beginning this conversation. It's a really important one, and it's really important. And I welcome your thoughts on that. I think that we're just beginning. So anybody who has more to say about it or has innovative ideas about it, I think the department's open to hearing them.
And I wonder if there were to be triggered an automatic post-incident interview with everyone who's involved. I went to a really bad incident in Echo Park some years ago, and there was a corpse there. And that in itself was awful enough. But the firefighters on the scene kind of traipsed around, I don't know, like it was nothing, because I think that they prepare themselves mentally for these types of things. But even if it doesn't seem like it affects someone, it does, right? So even just acknowledging that there's been a traumatic incident that may not have visibly affected anyone, perhaps some sort of automatic post-incident interview. It can be as cursory as can be, but at least it's an option to just check in on someone once they've been part of an incident that involves that type of situation.
There's some of that happens already in the department,
Okay.
just as part of post-incidents review about what happened. But you're right, that there should be more of a focus on how are you doing emotionally
For the
after
person.
that. Yes.
Right, another person. Okay.
I totally agree with you.
Thank you. I just think perhaps there's an opportunity there. It stayed with me after I observed that. Thank you
I've
so
had
much.
similar incidents when I go on Redlux.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other, you're good? Okay. Thank you so much. So colleagues, like to recommend the reappointment of Ms. Ibarra, and seeing no objections, that'll be the order, and we'll see that in council. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And Madam Clerk, I believe that brings us to item number 6 on the agenda.
Thank you. Item number 6 is a motion, Buscaino, Rodriguez, Harris Dawson, and Cedillo, relative to directing and requesting as appropriate the LAPD and the Mayor's Office of Gang Reduction and Youth Development to report on the recent surge of violent crime in the city and the department's strategy for responding to the increase.
Thank you. Actually, if you guys can hold tight, I just realized. So we have 3 public comment cards on this item. You guys can stay. You're welcome to stay. So Jamie Rabb, Albert Farias, and Parker Rand. Hi.
Voices Neighborhood Council in South LA.
Oops, sorry. Let us
Sorry.
cue that up again. Go ahead.
2 years ago when I joined the Neighborhood Council, I never imagined that I would have to speak about the unspeakable. Our Neighborhood Council meetings are held in the basement of Vermont Square Library. Usually Martha, our librarian, shoos us up the basement stairs at the end of the meetings, and normally we chat outside the library, which is right outside Vermont Square Park, amid like soccer games and children playing in the playgrounds. But May 14th was not usual or normal. It was horrific. The end of our meeting on that day was not met by familiar delights of children playing, but by their screams of terror and horror as gunfire tore through our playground, a beautiful 5-year-old little girl, and took the life of our council member's cousin. These horrific scenes cannot be normalized. No child should fear playing on the jungle gym or swinging in the playground. No parent should fear for their child's safety in a playground. And I, for one, never want to speak about these tragedies again. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert?
Hello, my name is Albert Farias. I'm a professor at USC, the current vice president of the Voices Neighborhood Council, and a very concerned citizen of Vermont Square in South LA. I'm here today to communicate 3 key points. First, I want to thank the council members who brought this motion to the agenda. Gun violence in South LA is real, and our children are being gunned down in the parks. Second, after walking door to door after this incident, I urge you to secure funds for the installation of security cameras in our Vermont Square Park. Harvard Park has seen a reduction in gang, drug, and transient-related crime after the installation of the cameras. Third, our community welcomes and wants the cameras. Third, I'd like the City Council to create a multi-department and collaborative community task force to address gun violence in South LA, bringing everyone to the table, and I will gladly volunteer for that committee. Our children in South Central have asked us to speak up, and they demand on you to respond.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Parker Rand?
Hi, I'm Parker Rand, also an instructor at Trade Tech and at-large representative on Voices Neighborhood Council. The second the gunshots tore into Vermont Square Park, the lives of every child playing there changed. So how many children will never again feel safe in their playgrounds? We need to see the return of foot patrols and the installation of security cameras. We can't stand aside and watch well-regulated gangs bear arms and shoot our children playing in the playgrounds. We need to stop statistically minimizing these tragedies when the human math right now as we speak is expanding. Every child whose life was changed on May 14th has parents, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, cousins. Eventually, hopefully in time and with your support, they will make friends and meet neighbors, have classmates, colleagues, and coworkers. Without your support, how many of their stories they tell about May 14th will end with, "You know how it is." When right now we can change their stories and tell everyone in our communities that we know how much better it can be.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon, Chiefs and Anne. Good to see you. So colleagues, we'll go ahead, and we're also joined this afternoon by our colleague Marquise Harris Dawson, who represents much of the area where we have seen this surge in violence. And I just to kind of bring us, and I want to thank those that made the effort to come this afternoon and be here for this conversation. It is an important one, and there was a reason why we brought this motion forward, and it was because we recognize that there definitely has been a spike. We have seen this surge in violent crime. More importantly, we know the summertime months also will continue to see increased activity, and our biggest concern is making sure that we can do all that we can to deploy a comprehensive response to reduce those numbers, if not eventually eliminate them. Having the highest amounts of programming available to youth, I know for me and my colleagues, is of great importance. And it's not through policing strategies alone that I believe that we get there. So, but I'm grateful for our chief and our grid partners for being here this afternoon to engage in this conversation. So, Chief Arcos, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez, and good afternoon, Councilmember O'Farrell, Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Harris-Dawson, Councilmember Rude. Before I get started, I also want to thank our community members here for being present and speaking up on the violence that occurred in Vermont Square. I know we can't get that back. That was a horrific incident and shooting, and nothing is more important to our chief of police and to all of you on the council than public safety, especially the safety of our children. I know it doesn't make it any better, but I do want to report back that 4 of the 5 suspects related to that incident are in custody. Again, great work by operations by South Bureau Homicide and the detectives from 77th Street to pursue that case so vigorously. So again, just thank you to the community members for being here and voicing their concerns. I'm here today just to provide you again a little overview and a snapshot of the analysis that occurred during the period of February 24th through April 27th. It's about an 8-week period, about 62 days, where we experienced that increase in our violent crime. Specifically, I'm going to speak to the violent crime that occurred in Operation South Bureau. During that period of time, there were 34 homicides citywide. 22 of those 34 homicides did occur in Operation South Bureau, and 214 victims shot during that period citywide. 89 of those shooting victims occurred in Operation South Bureau. 160 victims that were shot during that period were attributed to being gang-related, about 75% during that period. For some context, during that same period last year, we had 129 victims shot, so it was 85 less victims last year than we had this year during that time period. The increase consisted of a significant violent crime spike of 26 victims shot and 10 homicides during the last week of March. So I'd like to kind of report back on looking at that period. What were we experiencing? What was going on during that period that was attributing to this spike? So I'm going to try to break it down into 4 distinct issues that were going on within Operation South Bureau that were driving this violence. First, there was multiple gang feuds on several fronts spread out through 77th Street. There were 4 distinct feuds that were very retaliatory. Within South Bureau and specifically within 77th Division, there are a number of generational, historical gang feuds. They ebb and flow, unfortunately, in these areas. And I happen to serve as the commanding officer of 77th Division, and I would always have trouble sleeping if we had multiple feuds. This is what was occurring in this period. There was a big increase in the feuds spread out through the 4 corners of 77th Division. At the same time, Southeast Division experienced a resurgence of a dormant historic gang feud within our housing developments that had been quiet for at least 5 to 7 years, and that resurgence attributed again to our prioritization of where we're going to place our resources while this is occurring. While this was occurring also, Harbor area, which traditionally is handled very relatively just with their gang units, they had a number of gang feuds that were internal strife driven that were also causing concern and a pull of our resources to assist Harbor area with that gang strife. And then lastly, the 4th incident that occurred, the murder of Nipsey Hussle on March 31st, and then the subsequent deployment of our resources for 10 days to hold a presence in the community while there was a remembrance and a vigil that was going on for the next 10 days. Required, again, another redeployment of resources citywide to assist 77th Street so we could focus on ensuring that there was public safety and there was a sense of calm and normalcy within that vigil site at his business. At the same time, still allowing us to prioritize crime-fighting efforts in Harbor, in Southeast, and 77th Division. So there was a significant draw on resources, not only from Metropolitan Division, but also from the Office of Operations, where we were pulling patrol units from across the city to help backfill 77th and Southeast so they could still handle our basic radio calls for service, but still hold areas with visibility to suppress any type of gang-related incidents in the area. So those are the four specific areas or items that were drawing or contributing to the spike during this time. And I think all of the council members on this board, to your respective areas, understand how this chief of police has his expectations on how we look at crime. The Los Angeles Police Department looks at crime every single day, just about every minute of every single day, from text messages and emails through our daily crime reports, our crime control meetings weekly, the Community Safety Operations Center, ComStat, direct report meetings, and then anything else that spontaneously that picks up. But we always have our eye on it and are moving as rapidly as we possibly can to the emerging trends. So the expectation from the chief through the Office of Operations is that we respond with a sense of urgency, that we look to return communities to normalcy as quickly as possible, and that our efforts are balanced with crime suppression enforcement and at the same time community engagement practices. So this was our expectation, and how we addressed this was through three prongs. First, through enforcement strategies that I just spoke to about the redeployment of our resources, our community engagement practices throughout. So I'll speak specifically to the community safety partnerships in Southeast. We extended hours of our community safety partnership officers that were working in Nickerson Gardens, Jordan Downs, Gonzac, to stay into the evening hours and have them stay in the housing developments while we put our crime suppression units on the perimeter to try and protect and hold that area from retaliatory practices or activity coming into that area. It was one of the things that we were able to do. We also moved resources from outside of South Bureau into South Bureau to handle radio calls and freeing up the patrol officers from 77th and Southeast to perform Z-car or free from radio call activity, again, to be highly visible up and down the corridors and then stay in those neighborhoods where we would normally expect retaliatory concerns to rise. And the last thing from the three-prong effort is, again, the leveraging and the partnerships with our stakeholders, both the nonprofit agencies that are working to help calm the communities, working with clergy, and of course with GRID. And I'll just use this opportunity now to say that Ann Tremblay, Reggie Zachary, and I have speed dial 1 on the phone, and we were speaking very frequently about the issues. Their work at the Nipsey Hussle Memorial Site is, I cannot speak enough about it. I don't want to take away from Ann to say that, but it could not have happened without their help, without the help of the Mayor's Office of Public Safety, the crisis response team, and that were all on the ground, and including the Nation of Islam that came to help again, trying to again calm the waters, let everybody mourn, but without violence. That effort for 10 days leading up to the funeral, there's a number of takes on what happened and how it was handled and how it was managed. I've just been on the other side where I've received a number of phone calls from outside law enforcement agencies across this region and in the nation to say, how did you do that? How did that work without having some sort of significant issue of violence or crime in there? And it was, again, the shared responsibility and the shared relationships with everybody who was on the ground there leading up to it to make it work. So it kind of gives you the footprint of how we looked at this. There's a number of bullet points that can speak to how we redeploy the resources during this period through the Community Safety Operations Center, which is our hub of receiving missions, assigning the missions by priority. And again, I'll speak to that on prioritization with Operation South Bureau with the 4 distinct issues that were going on. We had to assess that daily on what was spiking. There's one priority that we had for one day. The next day, something else became a priority. That's how significant this crime spree or this violent crime spree was happening to us. And I think overall, we were able to manage as best we could with the resources that we had, utilizing both the Office of Operations resources again, and then the resources that we could get from Metropolitan Division during this time as well.
Chief, I had one question, and when you mentioned, you made reference to the fact that the gang activity had been dormant from roughly 5 to 7 years. What was the trigger that now has erupted in this feud? Has that been ascertained by the department, or? There
is something anecdotally that I could speak to that they would believe was a trigger with the leveraging of social media and the social media platforms. There is it is a vehicle to taunt one another, and I believe that was a factor. I don't know if it was solely the contributing factor to the issues, but just don't want to take away from the hard work that's been done through the Community Safety Partnership that's been working there so aggressively and so compassionately on building trust and legitimacy in these areas. But that is something that has been repeated to us, that this was a factor in the back and forth that occurred during that period of time. So let me just, I'll just close out with this. During that period that we discussed, we had an increase from last year of 85 more shooting victims. Today, our increase it's down to 47. It's still something we're not happy with, but we've reduced that increase, and we're down 9 fewer homicides this year than last year. I'll say optimistically, but very cautiously, that we've had a little bit of some subsiding. There's still much work ahead of us because these are the months of the summer when things start to heat up, and again, we are prepared for it through all 4 of our bureaus in the city are now using the Community Safety Operations Center as their vehicle to manage resources and manage missions in every part of the city. This was something that was taken from the best practice from South Bureau and Central Bureau, so we're happy about that. Thursday through Saturday from 4 p.m. to midnight, we have a captain or above in every bureau managing resources and responding to emergency trends immediately using the efforts of the Department Operations Center, or they also have the authority, again, to move resources very quickly to any kind of spikes that are happening during the evening. Currently, the citywide homicides are 108 for this year versus 117 last year. That's a nearly 8 percentage point reduction. South Bureau homicides are down 9.3%, 49 versus 54. Specifically to 77th Street, they are down 9.5% this year from last year, and Harbor area is down 12.5% this year from last year. Our shooting victim count is 47 more this year than last year, about 12% increase. South Bureau currently is experiencing a 13.7% increase, so it's 25 more shooting victims than they had last year. But during this surge, 77th Division experienced a 60 more shootings than they did last year, so that has subsided down to 25. We'll continue to work on that. And our overall Part 1 crime for the city is down 7%, which means, in statistical jargon here, we have experienced 4,014 fewer crimes this year in the city than last year. And our Part 1 crime in South Bureau is down 9.2%, which means 1,120 fewer crimes in Operation South Bureau than this last year. So I think I'll give the opportunity to Ann to speak at this point, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Ann. And Ann, if you could also address, because based on the number that...
I'm sorry?
No, based on the percentage that the Chief mentioned in terms of the 75% of the shootings being gang-related, my question is how many, among that 75%, how many of those would have been captured in terms of the age ranges that GRID services in this?
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, that's a little bit of apples and oranges,
right,
just because of the way GRID is set up. So if I can give you just a real brief run-through of our comprehensive approach,
okay,
and the services provided to those particular age ranges intersect with the violence interruption or incident response, but the age ranges don't limit what we do in terms of responding to shootings and homicides. So the age ranges don't apply to a particular part of our work. So if I can, so GRID focuses, traditionally, when you've heard about GRID before, we are absolutely focused on helping reduce violence and gang crime. But our mission is larger than that, right? We want to support youth and families, whether it's the youth that are potentially high risk of gang joining, or those youth and young adults that may already be gang involved. So to your point, on the prevention side, those higher risk youth, 10 to 15, are who our nonprofit provider service. On the intervention side, it's 14 to 25-year-olds who are already gang involved, gang affiliated, gang associated. Those are two big parts of our work and big parts of the contracts and the funding that the city provides to GRID that goes out to our community-based providers. On the intervention side, our intervention providers are also responsible for what we call violence interruption or incident response, and that's responding to all gang shootings and homicides throughout the city, and that is done through what you're all familiar with, I believe, our community intervention workers. So they work for those intervention agencies, and they are folks with lived experience. Many of them have a background in having been gang involved or gang affiliated. Some do, some don't, but they all have what we call a license to operate. They can work within a community. They are credible messengers within the community. And those are the folks, along with our team in the GRID office, our regional program coordinators, who respond to all the gang shootings and homicides. So we call our incident response program, the base of it is a triangle. You have law enforcement in the form almost primarily LAPD. We do sometimes respond to shootings in the county that may impact the city because of rivalries, and so that law enforcement prong may involve other folks. We have our GRID office team, our 9 regional program coordinators who are assigned geographically, and then those community intervention workers. And the focus and strength of that work, and I would put to you that makes us unique from any other city, is that triangle of having an ability for each of those pieces of that triangle to have some level of communication and interaction. In many cities where street outreach or intervention workers exist, there is no connection or conduit for connecting with law enforcement. In our city, we have those regional program coordinators to act as the bridge, buffer, convener, all of those things to respond. So that is what happens every day, all the time, 24/7 in the city. The intervention workers respond 24/7, as does our team in the mayor's office. So phone calls, emails, going out to the scene, going out to the hospitals, with the major effort, our focus of attempting most immediately to prevent retaliatory violence. That is our major focus. But those intervention workers and those teams also focus on rumor control so that the community understands what's going on, and hopefully bad rumors don't go out there that might lead to somebody doing something they might regret, as well as victim support and victim assistance. Those things exist. Some families want those from people they know, like the intervention workers, and so they provide that support and connection. So that's sort of the immediate, and then as a few days pass, depending on what the type of incident was and what is coming in, look for different ways to really keep folks from retaliating. And that is something that, again, we've been incredibly successful at. One shooting, one homicide is one too many. Our goal is, like all of you, like LAPD, is to get that to 0. but we do have evidence that the investment that this council, Mayor Garcetti, has made in this type of work has reduced retaliatory violence. We'll have a report coming out around August, an evaluation report that focuses specifically on South LA and shows that this work has reduced retaliatory violence. So to your point, Madam Chair, that law enforcement is an important and key component. What LAPD does is essential, but what we've invested in is this community-based, community-led approach to also owning public safety, and we will continue to do that. When we had this spike, I can't say that we did anything different. We just did what we do. The intervention workers did what they do, whether there's no spikes or spikes come up in a neighborhood. They were all in to respond in the community, both in a reaction to incidents, but also to plan proactively, to think about what they could do in terms of proactive peacemaking, pop-up events, bringing groups together. And I think I'll just end and leave it to you to ask questions, to say that from where I sit as the director of GRID, working with all our community-based organizations, working with the staff of all of your offices, and working in communication and collaboration with the police department, that the Nipsey Hussle series of events is something that, in the wake of a tragedy for somebody who meant so much to so many people, we have a lot to be proud of as a city, because I think that's a great example of how our investment paid off, and our commitment to allowing community a place to mourn, allowing and investing in community to help keep their own area safe, allowing folks from different neighborhoods to come together and mourn, as well as members of the public. It really was an incredible collaboration that was built on all of these years of relationship building, strong communication, and investment of time and money.
So I know the one question, and just going back, and I appreciate that comprehensive overview of the work of GRID, and I know the unique and incredible work that it provides citywide. But again, just kind of drilling down in terms of those that have been engaged in incidents, had we identified any of those individuals as part of the programming effort on the intervention side, as part of, were any of those individuals that had been engaged with some of our contractors, did we lose them? Or is this a different cohort of individuals that we've not yet reached?
Well, again, I have to be careful about what I say in terms of getting too specific for you. I'll be quite frank. We have a very strict protocols about confidentiality. So in terms of a particular incident in a particular neighborhood, whether somebody who was either a victim or perhaps somebody that LAPD may have arrested with regard to crime, whether or not they were a GRID client, I cannot share with you. But what our intervention workers do in every instance is use a moment of crisis as a point of engagement. Part of their work, in addition to incident response, is bringing in clients. And so the clients who are 14 to 25-year-old would be GRID model clients and fit with the model, but some of these incidents do involve either victims who may be older than 25, and our agencies still work very closely to try to connect them to job training resources. So it's a constant.
So is there, that's part of our evaluation methodology though, right? Is to, when you're looking at these contractors and the efficacy of their work, you are in fact looking at those metrics to determine whether or not we are in fact successfully engaging these youth in such a way that we haven't lost them to this activity.
Oh, there's no question. On both prevention, intervention, and violence interruption, we have a very robust data collection process. In terms of clients, it's de-identified.
Sure.
So to protect them, protect the clients and their confidentiality, but certainly in terms of qualitative evaluation and conversations, knowing that. With regard, I guess I can say broadly, with regard to some of the incidents that happened during the period that you're asking about, some of those victims, and this is true not just in South LA, they were clients. And I can't get more specific than that.
No, and I'm just broadly trying to get a
so they
picture.
were, and what I would say to that, Madam Chair, is that that I can't say that means that the agency failed, that they became.
I'm just trying to ascertain whether or not we have, again, we're equally committed to making sure that we are reaching these folks before these incidents occur. And how successful were we in connecting with some of the individuals that perhaps were engaged in these activities that we hadn't managed to connect with, if you follow me. So I'm trying to see how else we augment the resources that are deployed in the area so that we can capture these youth and potentially engage them before they fall off into these gang-related crimes.
Sure, and I think that's why we focus on the community intervention workers. And so they actually keep a small, what we call a transitional caseload themselves. Some folks on the intervention side who may be gang-involved or affiliated, it's a big step for them to become a client, as you can imagine. So we use the experts, these intervention workers who know these communities, to start to draw them in, and they keep a small caseload because what they're trying to get them to do is actually to agree to becoming an actual client. Once they are a client, those services go in 6-month cycle. So I guess what I would say is it would not be fair to evaluate an agency that someone was a client and then became a victim, or frankly a perpetrator, because this work isn't perfect, right? So they are doing everything they can to bring the right folks into services, and if they don't meet that age range, get them connected to the services that they do need.
Sure.
That is
and
please
don't misinterpret my questions, because they're really about making sure that we are properly resourcing so that we can, again, reduce what we've experienced in terms of this spike. And so it's not a judgment. I know the broader work and the efforts that are being deployed. It is much more a commentary about making sure that we are adequately resourcing these areas with the support services that they need to be more effective in combating these spikes. And so, don't it's not a questioning of the.
I guess I would say that to your question is that is the full scope of their work. If you're saying, if I could put myself in the place of all the agencies we contract, if you're asking me, and particularly the South LA ones, if they could use more resources and add more intervention workers, I think their answer would absolutely be yes, right? There's a finite number of people who do this work right now who are funded under these contracts, and they do an incredible job with the resources that we currently have. The one way, just so you're aware, that we've augmented this resource and it focuses on South LA and will continue to focus on South LA because of the challenges there, the number of neighborhoods and gangs involved, is we do have a separate contract where we hire folks on a stipend basis, and that is meant to try to reach neighborhoods that we don't have enough intervention workers. And we just met to plan out for next year, starting with the new fiscal year of July 1st, to see where we have gaps and get folks from those neighborhoods who can be effective at both connecting young people to services as well as preventing retaliatory violence and being proactive. So it's a constant dance and focus to get the resources in the right place. But I will say, unlike LAPD, our resources, our intervention workers can't be redeployed to another area, right? Their expertise, their license to operate is in a particular neighborhood or area. So we don't have that flexibility to redeploy resources.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may add, just
Yes.
to on the heels of what Ms. Tremblay was talking about, as an organization, we're trying to assist also to get ahead of that violence so that these individuals or these youths don't get to the point like you're talking about where they have to be encountered as a client. So obviously through our engagement in our youth services and our youth programs, we're currently redesigning our cadet program to have the ability to include more kids, developing cadet programs within churches, specifically in the South LA, to eliminate that stigma where kids don't want to come to a police station and be chastised by their peers or individuals by being involved with police. So we're expanding our youth capabilities, and I'd be remiss if I don't discuss the opportunities and possibilities have been provided by the Community Safety Partnership that was initiated thanks to the leadership of Marquise Dawson, councilman, at the Harvard Park area, as we have seen the tremendous decrease in crime and the tremendous involvement in the community, and to involve the youth of that community to stem the tide and deprive these gangs that flow of individuals so that we don't have to encounter them in the future. So it's an ongoing process that we're also assisting to try to curtail them. And as you also know, for us, the diversion program is something that we're completely involved with to try to get the youth that we encounter away from a lifestyle that would eventually end up in perhaps in a case management at the grid level.
Thank you so much, Chief. Councilmember Dawson, Harris Dawson, would you?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members, for indulging us and allowing us to visit with you today. I want to thank Chief Arcos for the report and also grateful for the overview of GRID and the specific time period. I would have a further question and then a comment about just the particularities of the deployment of Metro, because one thing that happened also in this time period is the LA Times released a report talking about the number of stops by Metro, and there was a good amount of controversy about that in the community. And then, the mayor called for, a slowdown of Metro stops, and there was some back and forth between the chief and community groups. And there are some people out there, specifically our police union, has sent out mailers to people saying, because people ask questions about Metro, everybody's shooting in your neighborhood. So I would really want you all to speak about that. And I'll close with this, and not try to take up too much time in this committee that I'm not in. I just want to reiterate the significance of the work that LAPD, that GRID, the Nation of Islam, the mayor's team, not just my council office, other council offices that volunteered during those 10 days following the killing of Nipsey Hussle in broad daylight with a gun. I had occasion to be in, this is an anecdote, but I think it's important. I had occasion to be in Washington, D.C. with a group of people from every big city from around the country. And I lost count of the number of people who said no other city in the world could have pulled off what Los Angeles pulled off in those 10 days. We were, it was incident-free. The energy was good, and we were able to escape that time period without violence, without a significant confrontations. And the demeanor and behavior of LAPD officers, I have to say, having grown up in this city and been on the other side of officers most of my life, I'm still stunned to this day about how the men and women from South Bureau and around the city handled themselves in that situation, and how the community responded to them. And so, again, kudos on that. And we're, as you all know, we're watching hour by hour, day by day. Our office, this is our perhaps a shortcoming on our part. I don't want to know how many Metro officers there were. I don't want to know how many kids got counseled. I don't even want to know how many football games there were in my CSP program, even though all that stuff is important. I got to see a reduction in people shot and a reduction in people killed. And we're getting that in the last 6 weeks or so. And so we'll continue to watch and continue to be helpful for whatever folks need. But I do want to hear about this Metro deployment in particular and how you all are thinking about that over the summer.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Councilmember. I do also want to say thank you, and thank you for your visibility, your leadership, and your presence during that 10 days. It did not go unnoticed. Out there working with the community as well. To the Metro deployment, I think all the council members know that we had a realignment of Metropolitan Division officers, that we lost anywhere between 80 to 88 officers that were redeployed back to the Office of Operations to ensure that we were meeting our patrol plan and patrol deployment. So that significantly reduced the number of officers that we had available to deploy citywide. Chief Moore made a very conscious decision and direct decision about the opportunity to deploy Metropolitan Division to all 4 geographic bureaus. So each geographic bureau received a platoon from the Metropolitan Division that was basically home-based to that geographic bureau and would work those violent crime trends, specifically gang activity, in each one of the 4 bureaus. The South Bureau currently has a platoon, which gives us anywhere between 1 to 2 squads a day, if it's feasible. Sometimes it does not work out on the math, and it's only one squad. That has been the deployment practice that we've been utilizing since the realignment. During the spikes, we do have the discretion to pull out of the other bureaus to help backfill and supplement South Bureau, which we did do. We did do a number of times during that spike of violence. And once the spike subsided, they were pulled back because, again, it was our commitment to keep the other geographic bureaus, the other parts of the city whole, to have a Metropolitan Division. One of the other things that we've learned over time also historically is that, so let me just say this first before I talk about that, is that, and I think you've heard our chief say this many times, we don't always get it right. The Metropolitan Division officers don't always get it right. Our gang officers don't always get it right, and neither do our patrol officers get it right. But by and large, we have the most professional law enforcement agency in the world that does get it right, and we're very, very proud of that. But to the Metro deployment, we have had a over-dependence on them coming in to save the day, and that's not what it's about. It's everyone's responsibility in that division. It's an all-in mentality. Everyone has to have a mission in that division, from the gang officers to patrol officers to the senior lead officers to vice and narcotics. When there's a crime spike going on in there, everyone has to take a piece of it to ensure that we can get a handle on it. And that is a mentality that we've gone under, that's supported by Chief Moore and our practices, and the Office of Operations expectation is continue to do so. So I hope that kind of answers a little bit of the question. But we'll use that same practice going into this summer. We do have, there was a surplus of overtime for between now and June 29th that we're going to help supplement and backfill our summer night lights on the 32 parks. Great program. And within the next 3 weeks, we've also asked our divisions, all 21 divisions, to utilize the opportunity on this overtime to increase foot beats, to increase bicycle patrols, to do safe parks where we have officers in the park during the daytime. We know kids are out of school now using the parks, so we're looking for specific hubs of the city where we have large congregations in these parks to have a presence in there. We're working with Freddie Booker from the Chiefs Community Relations section also to have his officers out there on the weekends as well. So we're trying to start these first 3 weeks of the summer with an increased presence in some of these key areas throughout the city.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that report, and I'm very happy to hear about the summer intervention, because the buzz on the street is still that,
yes, sir.
Hey, there's something that could be brewing there, and I'm very happy that we're going to be working with GRID. My office will be working with GRID and Council Districts 10, 15, and 9 to put some extra safe passages on the streets, to work on the pipeline of intervention workers. Colleagues, one of the issues with the intervention workers is, like a lot of our workforce in the city, is a lot of the intervention workers are aging out. So they're getting to the age where, you know, maybe the young guys don't necessarily listen to them. So we need to get some.
I'm not going to tell them you said
Yeah,
that.
right.
Believe me, there's always another time to come back.
Right. So we're working to sort of backfill and recruit a new generation of intervention workers, and also a new intervention that we're trying with some community organizations is healing circles. And so I heard the folks from 90037, and you know, I know that's not necessarily my space, but we're going to have dozens of healing circles so that community members, when there's a shooting, there's a place to come. And so those kids that you talked about that are going to tell stories, so there's a structured place to come, there's a mental health professional there, and we talk about it together as a community and work through it so that we don't ever normalize people getting shot or shot at, and much less people dying. And so those things we'll be doing in the summer in collaboration with GRID and the police department, and we look forward to a safe summer where we'll have even better numbers than we reported today. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Harris Dawson. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. And Chief, thank you for, I was going to talk about two policies, one I liked and one I didn't particularly like. And that was I liked the mini metro reassignment because I thought it was the right thing to do for the department. So I'm glad you explained that. The one I never really did like, and I think it has an impact on our ability to work with gangs, is after the Rampart disaster, we eliminated crash, we redesigned the gang units, we put in some requirements for gang personnel that many officers found objectionable, and we lost a lot of our gang personnel. One of the things that we did, and this is old information, maybe I'm wrong, but one of the things was a requirement that gang personnel didn't stay over 5 years, as I recall. Is that still in place?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let me tell you why I think that's bad. First of all, we lost a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge. I had a case, and as you know, I'm a reserve officer. I work as a homicide detective. I had a case in Hollenbeck. It was a gang-related case. So I went to Hollenbeck gang unit to talk to them about the suspects in this case, and nobody knew anything about the gang. They didn't know these guys. They didn't know the gang. I ended up finding the information out from a senior lead officer who used to be in the gang unit, who fortunately was still there, and he was able to give me the information I needed. But the point was, the gang unit didn't have the answers for me because they hadn't been there long enough. They didn't know the history of the gang. They couldn't go back far enough. It was a 16-year-old murder. So I think we lose institutional knowledge by a policy that was probably proper at the time, but is it proper today to still have that kind of constraint on people that we really need to have a long-term knowledge of the players and the gang activity? They need that long-term knowledge, and we're pushing it out, I think. So where are we? Is that policy going to be ever reviewed? Is it still in force? And do you believe that what we gained from the transparency that we put in place after Rampart is still of value greater than the institutional knowledge we've lost?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember, for that. I think there's some pros and cons both to your argument there, and I think Commander Rodriguez and I both served as gang officers, and we understand the value of expertise in knowing your gangs and knowing the history. And we expect that all of our gang units do pass that on as new officers come in. The chief, during his very early stages of taking over as chief of police, initiated these innovation groups, strategic planning, SPIGs, we call them strategic planning innovation groups. One of those innovation groups was looking at limited term assignments. The chief is a proponent of refreshing our workforce with officers who do have that expertise, who have been in gangs 5 or 6 years, that they move on and they get into patrol and share that same experience with these officers. So it's something that the chief is looking at. He's working closely with the committee that was put together to examine that, and also working very closely with the league to see where there is that middle ground there where we still have the value of the expertise, but we don't also want to have officers who just become also stale in one trick pony per se. We want to be able to use their experiences to share with the rest of our workforce.
Okay. So you're still looking at ways to make this work better?
Yes, sir.
All right,
yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone for this report. A few questions. One is in relation to recovered or confiscated firearms, how they're traced, what kind of data you have on where they're from, Were they legally obtained or illegally obtained, etc.? So we can look at it in terms of a season or an incident or an area of focus. What do you have about tracking firearms that were used in these crimes?
You want to talk about this, AJ, a little bit on that or no?
Sure. So specifically in Operation South Bureau, Councilman, we have a collaboration with federal partners in which we have a center that every gun that is confiscated, every bullet casing that is recovered from a scene is entered and analyzed for patterns and consistencies. Through that, we've been able to create some linkage to see casings that have been left to separate scenes and connect them to a particular individual or a particular gun. So with that, in addition to that, we're working in collaboration with another federal agency, which gives us that ability to track these guns and go back and try to get down to the root and see where they came from, whether they purchased legally, illegally, or what the case happened to be. In addition to that, we have our Prohibited Possessors program, in which every individual who is not allowed to have a weapon for whatever reason, we do have a constant follow-up in which we try to make contact with those individuals and let them know that they're in a status at the moment where they are unable to own a weapon. So those weapons are confiscated as well. So it's one of those where we're trying to bring to bear not only our local resources but our federal partners to try to identify where those weapons are coming from, trying to link them when we get into these crimes so that we can be better prepared in handling those situations.
And do you have some data on where they're from? Are they from California? Are they from Los Angeles? Are they from out of state? Were they driven over state lines?
Yeah, we track that, Council Member. We didn't bring that for you today, but we can certainly share that with you. We have a very close relationship in our Criminal Gang Intelligence Center out of Operation South Bureau, where we have a partner from Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms who works very closely with us. The new director in the LA office was impressed with our working relationship and is really working to advocate on our part of the LAPD to bring in another NIBIN machine, which would increase our ability to look more quickly at casings that are recovered at the shootings.
I mean, I'd just love to find out what percentage of the firearms used in crime, all types of crime, but in this instance, gang crime and the surges that we experience. I think that you can probably make a link between firearms that are used in crime and states that have open carry, and how that affects Los Angeles at the urban core. Those links must exist. I would feel that they must exist. And how those firearms make it into the hands of people who shouldn't have them and maybe illegally obtain them. I think a forensic look is going to help us a whole lot in terms of how we can craft better gun safety legislation, for example.
Yes, sir.
So I would love to have that information. It might be something that the LAPD should do in general, and maybe an initiative that we could undertake.
Yes, sir.
The other one, in terms of this, you mentioned social media taunting, right? So I think all of us know that we're all just sitting ducks on social media. We get taunted by trolls all the time, and we can't exactly respond back because then of the blowback. So we just, like I said, we're sitting ducks. But in terms of the social media trolling and taunting in relation to rival gangs, is there a component where the city or an entity can engage in and help control the rumors that get spread as well? In other words, is there a creative way? It's tricky, but is there a way that the city or some entity could also use the same platform and say, there's a rumor out there that this happened and it's not the case. We have a prayer circle coming. Please join us on this day. Let's work together to end this fight. Something. Could we use social media?
To specifically answer your question, Councilman, the answer is yes. We have a variety of resources that do monitor social media for specific hashtags that would be of interest to us, that lead us to believe that there be something brewing. For instance, our Community Safety Operations Center in Operation South Bureau, they do have 2 gang officers specifically assigned to troll social media, and they'll either use names or they'll have pages in order to try to capture that information that is going back and forth, that taunting, so that we can get ahead of it. We have had cases where that information has been discovered. We have communicated that with our partners in GRID so that they can specifically work those neighborhoods and try to placate whatever that information or that activity that is going. Vice versa, we've had the same type of activity coming back to us, where we've received information that there's been taunting between two neighborhoods, and we have to have a presence in order to prevent some sort of violence. Obviously, as you know, we have our Major Crimes Division that is constantly monitoring social media for any type of interesting hashtags or any type of wording or any type of activity that would be indicative of any type of violence, and we do react as much as possible, and also are proactive in the matter that as soon as we get that information, we act on it so that we can prevent that act of violence.
And if I just may add, Council Member, one of the roles that our community and intervention workers play is they're certainly monitoring it. They use social media. They have relationships with folks who do. And so whether they become aware on their own or through our GRID program coordinators directing them to something they've found out about, they work very hard, if they know the folks involved, to use their influence, their ability to interact and say, hey, what you put out, A, is not factual, so do the rumor control. Perhaps you want to take down that post because it's not accurate and it could cause violence or retaliation. Or they know the folks, they've seen it, say, this might get you hurt, right? What you've put up there that you might be taunting or threatening someone for your own safety. We need to keep the shooting down. We need to keep the violence down. So that's one of many ways they work to use their influence quite directly.
Okay. Lastly, Madam Chair, my office works with a whole lot of service providers to the immigrant community. And we have those relationships. And there is a strong feeling amongst them all that undocumented immigrants are often targeted by gangs to be victimized or to be, cajoled into a gang. And not sure how relevant that is to this specific presentation and conversation we're having here, but it's something to think about. And what do you have to say about that?
I'll just speak very kind of anecdotally again on that, council member. As you know, I serve as a Chiefs Latino liaison to the immigration advocates throughout the city, and our partnership and our work has been, I think, very groundbreaking as far as any other city is concerned. And we do a lot of work to restore the confidence in our undocumented community about reporting crime when they're victims of extortion or when they're being recruited for gangs. I know we're not going to get all of them, but there is a concerted effort to address that particular question that you're speaking to, and we're going to continue to do that.
And our grid-funded agencies do the same, have those relationships and collaborations specifically with regard to communities like the ones you serve, with regard to the transnational gangs, working to have influence there. And we will be once again this summer at our Summer Night Lights locations engaging with immigrant rights and some of those advocacy organizations to come out and use the park as a place of engagement, just like our prevention and intervention providers do to bring clients in. The immigrant rights organizations and advocacy organizations will be there as well.
In addition, Councilman, our senior lead officers are heavily ingrained in those neighborhoods, and a lot of times they're able to get that information by secondhand. And the minute we get any type of rumor or any type of perception that this is happening, that is something that we respond to as well. Obviously, we always try to get a victim. We do need a victim for a crime. It is difficult. We've had cases where working through the senior leads who have built relationships with these individuals, we've been able to obtain them as a victim, obviously confidentiality being of the utmost considering the retaliation aspect of it. But anytime we do become aware of that type of situation, or we feel that that could be happening, we do try to take action on it, and perhaps through enforcement of other codes or other violations of the law, because we know extortion is very difficult to get that victim to cooperate.
And just to kind of tie this up, Also, minors who are undocumented are often targeted as well, including unaccompanied minors. So, Chief Arcos, you probably know about that, but it's just something we hear from our groups that is a very vulnerable population preyed upon by gangs.
Yes, sir.
So,
It is, and we'll continue to work with that. The coalition of advocates that we have in this region, in this county, have been doing a lot of work down at the border because of that same thing you've been speaking to, and that's at the forefront of our discussions here locally.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Chief and Chiefs. And congratulations.
Thank you.
And Ann, we appreciate it. So we're going to go ahead and continue this item because we would like to revisit it given that we know we're approaching the summer season and the activity. So we will be continuing this item and keeping it in committee for another report back, at which time we'll notify you in advance. But I would like a report back on the suite of youth programming that's going to be available for the South Bureau. So that we could continue to, evaluate what program offerings that we're having. I think, the longer conversation, and Chief Arcos, I know you, and everyone's a big advocate of this, but, the earlier we catch our youth and get them into structured programming, the better for all of us in terms of that outcome. So if in the next 2 weeks we could just get kind of a report back on what offerings are currently being provided for youth during the summer program months, that would be very helpful.
And you're speaking citywide, right, Councilmember?
Excuse me?
Citywide services or Southborough?
Yes, so whatever comprehensive youth programming we are offering in the summertime months right now that we could highlight, I think in particular, would be a productive way for us to also just look at what we are doing in the area, where the gaps might exist as it relates to just, again, for me, it's not just about the policing effort, it's some of the youth programs and some of the other productive outlets that we can create in these areas as well. So, Ann, we'll follow up with you on that. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you all for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, colleagues, we have general public comment that remains, and I have a card for Teranig. There's no Teranig, and I don't see Wayne Spindler, so I believe that concludes the agenda. Madam Clerk, are we? So we are done. So thank you very much, colleagues. We are adjourned.